Welcome to Bald Guy DIY. In this video, I've got a simple, white-hot explanation of color temperature. Of all the services I offer as an electrician, the one that always has the biggest impact with customers is installing something that brings more light. Installing a new light fixture or replacing the bulbs, relamping a fluorescent fixture, all of those things bring a lot of oohs and ahs simply because light is such an attractive thing to us and it makes such a big difference on the appearance of our rooms and the different environments that it affects. It used to be that you would go down to the home improvement store or hardware store and you'd pick up some light bulbs and it was pretty straightforward. They all looked about the same when you screwed them in and turned them on. In today's lighting market, however, we have a lot more options than the old incandescent bulbs. Things like fluorescent lighting and LED lighting especially have introduced a bunch of new color temperatures to the market. What is a color temperature? Well, I'm sure you've seen the difference yourself. Some lights look very yellow or orange in color, like a candle would look, and others look bright white, maybe even kind of blue, and kind of sterile looking, like you maybe would imagine being in a hospital or other industrial environment. In this video, I'm going to explain to you the differences between the color temperatures, why we use the term temperature in the first place, and give you my recommendation of the temperature I love the best when installing new lighting. So let's get into it. So when we think of color, often we think about color wavelengths. As you can see from the graphic, color of light is dependent upon the wavelength. Now, there are lots of different wavelengths that we're not able to see, but what we are able to see is called the visible light spectrum, the things that are visible to us. The visible color spectrum goes from red to violet in the old Roy G. Biv or rainbow color spectrum. Now, you might notice that white doesn't show up anywhere in that spectrum, and that's because white is actually a combination of many different light wavelengths put together and of course forming the white light. If you've ever shone a white light through a prism in school, you'll see that it breaks into a bunch of different colors, making up that visible light spectrum. So when we talk about color temperature, we're not talking about different colors like red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, violet, those kinds of colors. What we're talking about is different temperatures of white. It would be really easy to go way too sciencey and way too deep into the terminology, but basically, when we talk about color temperature, we're talking about something called a black body radiator, which I know sounds really complicated. It basically means an emitting source of light that shows many different light spectrums, or the full light spectrum. And so when we think about what is the most common black body radiator available to us, it's the sun. And when we think about the sun, we mostly think of it as giving off a white light. That's because it gives off all different wavelengths of light, and so we perceive that as white. Now, as you may have noticed, the sun appears to be different colors at different times of day. Sometimes we get a very orangey sky or even a reddish looking sky, and sometimes we get that bright blue sky. Color temperature is that range that we see from the sun. And so on the very low end of the color temperature scale, we see reds and oranges going to a bright, clear white, and then on the far end of the scale, we see a bluish color like we would see in our sky. It seems weird at first that we might use temperature as a way of describing the color of light that we're seeing, but if you think about it this way, it makes perfect sense. The more you heat up a black body radiator, the more the light grows and grows from a red to a white, and then at the high end, to a bluish color. And this is why we use temperature as the units instead of something like wavelength. When a black body radiator heats up to a few thousand degrees Kelvin, it starts on that red scale, moves towards a bright white, and then towards a blue on the highest end. So when we talk about an individual temperature, we're talking about what it would be like if that object was glowing at about that temperature. That's the color of light we would be seeing. 3,000 degrees Kelvin, we're seeing a more yellowy light, and then as we increase to about 5,000 or 6,000, we're seeing quite a neutral white, and then the higher we get after that, we start adding more and more blue to the color, and so it becomes a blue-white, or even eventually just a blue color. We use Kelvin instead of Celsius or Fahrenheit. It doesn't really matter, it could have been based on any scale, but that's the one they choose for this measurement. And if you want to know what Kelvin is compared to Celsius, it's about 273 degrees colder. So 273 degrees Kelvin is about 0 degrees Celsius. It makes a lot more sense, of course, to round it off to the nearest 100 or even 1,000 because there's not that big a difference in those smaller numbers. Now, how does this all translate into the color of bulb that you buy when you want to purchase something new for your home? Well, if we take a look at the color spectrum again, we see that again on the far left side, the lower degree temperatures, we're seeing quite red and then orange like a candle would be. And it gets whiter and whiter as we progress to the center of the spectrum. And then from the center onwards, it becomes bluer. So when we think about that warm yellowy light like we would expect in an incandescent bulb, that's going to be somewhere around 3000 Kelvin. And then as we get higher and higher numbers, it's going to go to a more neutral white and then to a bluer white. So 3000, 3300 Kelvin, that's about where we're going to see those more traditional orangey incandescent type bulbs. As we get to about 5000, we start to enter into the daylight color that's advertised on bulb boxes or LED fixtures. And that daylight really does look like the light that you would expect to be streaming in a window on a sunny day. I've had the experience of installing a new fixture with daylight bulbs, and when you look from a distance from another room, it actually looks like there's a skylight installed because the light looks so similar to the way the sun would look streaming in the window. As we go further above 5000, we do get into spectrums that would look quite blue, and we don't see a lot of those commonly available in stores. What we normally see is that 3000 range, 3000 to 3500 range for warm white, about 4000 for cool white, and then about 5000 for daylight. Having installed many different light fixtures with different temperatures over the years, I can say that 5000K is definitely my favorite. That's what I use in my own home and what I would recommend to others who are looking for a good default option. If you're trying to match other lighting in the room, more traditional looking lighting or antique look, you would probably want to go to the warmer white or the 3000 to 3500K range because you want to match that and give it more of a rustic or traditional look. If you want something that looks high-tech and modern, you might use cool white, or you might also use daylight because it goes more with that industrial or modern technology kind of look. It might be a little confusing when you go to home improvement stores because a lot of times they refer to the actual color temperatures in many different ways. They might call it warm or cool or soft, or they might have many different terms to describe the light. But if you look at those color temperatures, which are usually listed at least in fine print or on the back of the box, you will be able to get a pretty good idea of what the actual color is going to look like when you think about a scale like this one here. As you can see, this is the full range of the spectrum. You're really not going to expect to see things on the extremes, but right in that middle range from 3000 to about 6000, you are going to see lighting options available. That's really all there is to color temperatures in lighting. I'm sure there's much more science and physics talk that could be thrown in, but I think this is simple enough that you can be on your way choosing the right lighting to match the decor in your home or any application that you tackle. If you find this kind of content valuable, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment. Let me know what kind of ideas you have for things you'd like answered in the future. I like to post a Ask an Electrician video every few weeks and answer those questions that are commonly asked of me when people find out I'm an electrician. I post a new video every Saturday morning, and I have tons of projects on the way and other things that can interest you. I have so many different hobbies and interests. I'm sure I can find something that you would find worth watching. If you have a question, leave it in the comments or send me an email. My information's in the description below. Until next time, whatever color suits your fancy on your lighting projects, don't be afraid to be bolder.